going to get started this morning. Just firstly, before we start, just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're meeting on, the Gumbunya people, and pay my respects to their elders, both past, present and emerging. Welcome to our webinar this morning. I have with me 4 fantastic panellists who are going to answer your questions and tell you a little bit about how they see things happening in our world at the moment. So first, I have Kellon Beard from Business New South Wales, Richard Hennessy from Chau and Hennessy Accountants, Jack Dixon from CharterNet Coffs Coast, and Tony Brindley from Business Connect. I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves. I've just done that bit of hoo-ha. So off you go, guys. Your chance.
My name's Kellon Beard. I'm the Regional Manager for Business New South Wales on the Mid-North Coast. So I look after the area from Foster to Algorga, and I spend my day talking to businesses about their issues. We're a lobbying and advocacy organisation, so I work to promote their interest to both state and federal government.
Richard Hennessy from Chau and Hennessy Professional Accountants. We're a firm in Coffs Harbour that's been around for about 14 or so years with myself and Eddie, and well prior to that with Tom Corbell. When COVID hit, we were, I guess, as accountants at the forefront of all of the stimulus measures that were available and trying to get our heads around all of the grants and everything as well. So there's quite a lot of confusion there initially until the dust settled, and it was all about dealing with the uncertainty at that point in time. If you think about it, it was about a year ago now that all this hit, and it's amazing to think that we've got through it like we have at this point, but there is that uncertainty leading up to the next few months, perhaps longer. I think we've been lucky in some respects of our location in Coffs Harbour and where we are. I think we've been a little bit protected from everything. We've had a few cases of corona that have affected us. We're only really shut down, apart from some industry, like the cafes and restaurants and tourism were shut down in 3 or 4 weeks, a bit longer. Some that were affected more, but some that have really just gone gangbusters since. So it's really been a mixed bag, and a lot of actual success stories out of it as well, and opportunities. So it's been a very interesting time, and I think will continue to be.
Hi, I'm Jack Dixon from CharterNet Coffs Coast. That's my business. I'm also a chartered accountant, a bit newer in town, I suppose. Been here since about 2018. My business focuses on small and medium-sized businesses and uses a lot of technology to try and work smart, not hard. I had a similar experience to Richard and his firm in that I suppose when this all kicked in about a year ago, I spent the full month of April just learning, just doing like watching webinars with tax experts, interpretation of this new legislation that was getting made up by the week pretty much. And we didn't get it all at once. As you know, it came out sort of in dribs and drabs. So I took the approach that we've all just got to stick together and get our region through it, really, if there's going to be anything out the other side of it. So I've seen a lot of collaboration on the Coffs Coast throughout the whole thing. And like Richard said, I think we've been pretty lucky so far.
Thank you. My name is Tony Brindley, and I'm a Business Connect advisor based here in Coffs Harbour out of Nortec office. I cover the area from Laurelton up to Yamba. And over the last 2 years, I've assisted over 1,100 different businesses. So I started off with the bushfires, for example, then the floods early last year, and then into COVID. And the Business Connect program is a free New South Wales government program where you get free business advice from someone like myself. There are 120 advisors across the state that are available to help you as well. So we help you with anything from business planning, cash flow, record keeping. We don't take work away from accountants. We will help you get organised so that you can go to your accountant and be far more proactive with them. We can also help you with social media, e-commerce, selling online, marketing, sales, a whole range of things. And probably one of the best things is just someone to talk to. And it's free, it doesn't cost you anything, and we can narrow the issues down and give you a little bit of direction and get you moving along. And we've assisted lots of people with grants over that time period. Thank you.
Thank Thank you. So as you can see, we've got a very well experienced but well-rounded panel here. What we're going to ask you guys to do is, if you have questions as we go on, we're going to ask a few questions of our panellists. But if you've got questions, just shoot them through on the chat function, and we'll make sure that our panellists get those questions and answer them. If we do run out of time, we will certainly record those questions and get back to you if there's something that's needed. Just, I guess, as a bit of a warning, is that particularly our accountants will not be answering specific individual questions around individual business needs, but certainly general questions or information will be provided. It is something that this is a volunteer panel that's given their time to actually assist our businesses in the area to know what's going on, what changes might appear. Please ask questions. If there are things that we deem as a little bit more individualised than what we're able to do now, then we'll just let you know that. We do, obviously, I guess these guys have given a bit of a rundown about what sorts of things have been happening, what they've seen, but we were just having a chat before we got online just about what we've noticed in Coffs over the period of time. And as I think Richard said, about 12 months ago today, I reckon, is about when we started the big process of what's going to happen, what's changing. I know my team put together something like 29 newsletters in 9 weeks, trying to disperse information. And Jack rightly said, information changed every day. So I guess want to get a bit of feedback before we start with some real questions about what's one thing that you've seen from each of you that you've seen in Coffs in particular that you didn't expect to happen this time a year ago. That's a question on notice, guys, because I didn't tell you about that question.
I'll go first. One of the nicest things when this all started, I'd been working from home since late February last year, up until about November, and I live up around Woolgoolga, so each day I'll go down the street and buy a coffee in the morning and a coffee in the afternoon to help support the local businesses that are basically closed for a few hours a day. And then just talk to some of the retailers who are also opening only for a couple of hours a day. The thing that I noticed was that there was a genuine desire by Australians to go and support local small businesses. And the one that really sticks in mind, when I was at Woolgoolga, had my cup of coffee, walked around to a retailer, and two little old ladies, and I'm not being derogatory here, came up from Coffs Harbour to Woolgoolga for the day, and they were determined to spend money in town, and they had it mapped out, all the different places they're going to go to and what they're going to have for lunch and where they're going to do it. And I thought that was beautiful. The other thing that I noticed was there's a big pushback from a lot of goods made overseas. And as a result of that, also, there's a number of businesses along the coast looking at starting to make some of their products.
Yeah, Whoopi's getting a couple of breweries.
Yeah.
Should be good.
Yeah. Anything you noticed that you didn't think was going to happen, like at this time last year? Like, we were literally going into lockdown as a country. So what have you seen happen that you weren't quite expecting?
So I know that, it's a bit of a tourism town here, so I guess I wouldn't expect it to still be busy. Like we were just talking about, you have to make your money through Christmas for a lot of businesses, and yeah, it's still busy because we're getting a bit of a city influx, I suppose. And following on from that, people are pursuing a bit more of a lifestyle balance, and I'd probably say that I've had some of that. Like, it's been a really ridiculously overwhelming year, but I've done a lot of working from home, done a lot of juggling of our young daughter, and seen a lot of family, which I wouldn't have expected. That's been a silver lining, for sure.
Cool.
One thing I didn't expect was that we actually recovered in a lot of cases so quickly and with even better results. I just recall at the time there was a lot of doom and gloom about coronavirus, a lot of negative press about it and the devastation that it was going to wreak in Australia. And, I still to this day, if we turned off the media sometimes, the world would be a better place, I think. But there's so much negativity about it, so much doom and gloom about the potential impact of coronavirus, the deaths, the devastation it was going to have on the economy. So I was pleasantly surprised when, probably in a month's time, 6 weeks' time before the June long weekend, when things had actually sort of got back to some sort of normality and actually went the other way, and everyone who hadn't done anything for 3 or 4 weeks went out and did it in spades. And And like Tony said, there was this massive push to buy local, support local, and that's still continuing now. And, you know, I'll admit I listen to Macca on a Sunday morning and people are ringing up and talking about these industries that they have, and you're going, wow, I didn't know we did that. So the thing for me is I think there's a real lot of potential opportunity out there that we should be taking advantage of in certain industries, and hopefully things can continue on. So that was the surprise for me, that we did actually, it wasn't as bad as what we all thought it was going to be.
Yeah, sure. Just as a point before Kellon jumps in there, so Richard also sits on our local Coffs chamber, so they've initiated the Go Local First campaign, which I guess is a really indicative of that support that people are utilising local businesses as much as they can. So look that up if you don't know about it.
Absolutely.
So.
Very good.
And I think that's what I've seen is a lot of the way the businesses have pulled together around Coffs Harbour, particularly the Chamber with their Buy Local campaign. And it's been really good to see. I mean, one of the things, obviously, as a tourism town, we thought would be very badly affected. It hasn't been the case. But the way everyone's worked together, particularly when I come up here a few weeks ago for the Chamber's first networking breakfast, it was really surprising to see the number of people that turned out to show their support for the local business community. So it's really good. The resilience of the town has been really surprising.
Yep. And yeah, well, I guess we have had quite a good positive tourism opportunity. I can't negate there's been some businesses that have been really heavily impacted, or industries, and certainly still are. You know, I think of some of our gym owners and event organisers and things like that. I did hear on the radio on the way in this morning, though, that they're bringing up standing in bars, that you can stand up and have a drink just in time for St. Patrick's Day. So shout out to Harry Barry, he'll be very excited about that. So, so I guess just some questions. I might direct this one at you, Tony. So apart from the rolling back of JobKeeper and JobSeeker, what else might raise concern with support ceasing for business owners?
I've already started to see the JobKeeper that got rolled back in December. So if you had like a really good December quarter, you've gone off JobKeeper in this quarter. So February is usually a very quiet month, and that's just starting to have a little bit of impact for some businesses. Obviously, the end of this month being March, we're going to have more of those businesses come off. On the flip side, though, is there's more people coming into the region. They're buying houses and moving here, starting businesses. There's an enormous number of young startup businesses occurring. So there's a little bit more momentum happening on that front. With regards to the assistance, the government has announced that it's going to be looking at more targeted assistance, and I think there'll be more and more of that based on need rather than blanket coverage is what they've done over the last 12 months.
Yeah, sure. So that kind of takes me into my next question about, you know, what kind of support might be extended, and I thought Kellon might have a better take on that than others, maybe.
Yeah.
So.
Unfortunately, I don't think we've seen the last of JobKeeper on a broader scale. We've seen what the government's done with some areas of the country in regard to airfares and reduced airfares and subsidising those. What we've been lobbying for is, we were lobbying very hard to get a continuation of JobKeeper, but just to tweak the qualifications so people would naturally drop off, and we've seen that here from a high in Coffs Harbour of 2004 businesses on JobKeeper in July down to the latest figures, there's only 247 in December left on it. But it was a political decision. The government came out quite early and said it wouldn't go on forever. They are looking at targeting support. I'm not a very big fan of that, because that basically picks winners and forgets some people, so they become losers. And I think there's some industries that the government's not necessarily shining a light on that are being affected, and they're going to suffer through that, because it's only the high profile, like the airlines, that are getting subsidies. It's not helping other people that are at the moment suffering because they can't get inputs to their business. So they've got a very strong business model, strong business, but if they're struggling to get inputs because people or products they can't get in from overseas, then their business is suffering. So that's one of the things we've been lobbying for, but I don't think we're going to be successful from what the government said. Yeah.
So Jack or Richard might answer this. So obviously JobKeeper and JobSeeker are very well-known support packages, but there's been quite a few other things that the government has either mandated or business industry has done, like mortgage repayments and those sorts of things. Is there any information about what needs to happen with that? So are repayments starting back up again? How is that all working, and what kind of impact might that have, do you think?
Happy to field from my experience and then hear from you. Jack. So I saw a lot of this stuff sort of resolve maybe 6 months ago, because they were phasing all the rent relief out around the end of September. And I think in our region we got busy with more people coming in and a lot of domestic travel, and then obviously the Christmas busy period. So a lot of those negotiations went ahead already. And there are some people that maybe have continued to negotiate with landlords and that, and maybe that's just going to happen at a later stage. But in my experience and what I've seen across my client base is a lot of the time landlords were great and they didn't even ask for payback. They just sort of said, look, we'll do our bit and wear it for a few months, half rent, or a few months of no rent. So it's kind of back to normal, and it has been for a little while from what I've seen.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and look, I think if you are still on JobKeeper, there is still the government-backed loan scheme available, but again, that's a borrowing facility, which isn't really an answer. I think if you should be aware that this will be your last month of JobKeeper, and you really should have been planning for that. And if things are in a dire strait for whatever reason, then you really need to talk to somebody about it.
Yeah.
There's multiple industry groups out there that can help. So there is some support still out there. It's just finding out what that is and actually talking to someone about it. I think this is the time when 6 months ago we maybe all said that, hey, it's going to be February, March next year when we find out the impact of everything, because the government deliberately flooded the economy with money, and everyone has been much better off, I think, or certainly survived coronavirus and the impact of it. So this is the time when we all thought, well, this is when we'll find out where things are really at, and if people will cut spending, if unemployment will rise, if we'll have any other impact. But the good thing is, and I think the big thing is that benefited most of New South Wales, was that Queensland shut its borders down.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
I think people are going, anyway, it's benefited New South Wales tourism and everything else associated to it, and certainly not being able to go overseas. And everyone talks the same thing. They've had all this money, they've spent it locally, they're spending it on doing up the home, the gardens and all that sort of stuff. Maybe now that could change a little. And I guess that's the name of the topic today, wasn't it?
Yep.
Falling off the cliff. But again, I'm optimistic that that's not going to happen. But certainly if you're in a situation where you think that, dire times are coming, organisations like Tony's got, Kellon's are involved in, and your accountant and everyone else is out there to help you.
So just on the back of that, so I was going to ask an additional question, but someone in the audience has. So just with some of the activity that's occurring in Coffs at the moment, so things like bypass are coming up, buildings by CEX, Gowings and Shoreline, things like that. What do you think that Coffs might be exempt from any further hiccups?
I think so, yeah. I really am positive about the outlook for Coffs Harbour for the years to come. Because the government's also putting a lot of input into Coffs Harbour as well, infrastructure-wise, and what's happening down the jetty foreshores, and the hospital's expanding, the uni's expanding. We're getting all these sporting events. We've got a bypass coming. There's so many big things happening around Coffs Harbour now, and I think people are recognising now it is a fantastic place to be.
I'm certainly not asking you to look into a future ball and say there won't be anything. That's okay.
Can't guarantee it.
But yeah, certainly there's positive outlook, I guess. So one of the things that I was going to ask, in addition to the answers to those couple of questions, is we seem to have been quite and I use the word immune loosely, mainly because I know that there has been some industries and some particular businesses that have been really heavily impacted, and we can't ignore that. But Coffs as a whole, our economy has actually grown over time, number of new businesses has grown and things like that. So what might be the impacts to not individual businesses, but to us as a destination, and then us as industries with people in other areas who've been supported by JobKeeper, JobSeeker and other government supports, that's finishing. So therefore there's a little bit less disposable income or income that they don't necessarily need to worry about. Is there any ideas on that, what businesses might think about, what they might be able to do in that regard? Tony might answer that first.
Well, that's a really big, broad question there, Fiona. Thanks very much for that. One of the interesting pieces of information that came out, I think, in the last couple of weeks is that Australia is now a net exporter of capital, which is the first time since somewhere in the early 70s. Now, that is really great because we've always had to borrow money for mining projects, road projects, everything under the sun. So now, nationally, we're in a position where we actually lend money overseas. So that's going to have a big, broader impact that will spread across the economy. So I think that's a really big, broad thing to take in mind. The second thing is, you know, here for Coffs Harbour, the government has announced all of these tax write-offs. Now, they're going to be written off this year, which means that next year you're not going to have tax deductions. So you're going to be paying more tax. So there's more revenue coming back into the government. There's more money that can come into reducing the debt and also perhaps giving further stimulus if required. So I think on a higher national level, I think there are a lot of good things there. So if something did happen, we could still end up with an outbreak here accidentally. That will have an impact. It will be a short-term impact because of our testing regime, and once the vaccinations come around, it'll be even better. So I think it's the future's looking a lot rosier than what it did, but we are going to have impacts, and I would encourage everybody to prepare for a shutdown of some kind. Do some modelling, do some budgeting. You saw what actually happened last year. You've actually got figures to compare to. So I'd be using those as a benchmark to just have it in your toolkit, a plan for at least 3 different scenarios. And if they don't happen, that's just wonderful.
Expect the worst, hope for the best.
Absolutely.
That's, I think a lot of businesses are still cautious. And then perhaps build up a cash reserve for that occurrence happening, if you can. It's not as easy as just saying.
It's easy for us to say.
Right. But certainly a lot of people have modified the way they do business. And I think that's particularly important for Coffs Harbour, and we're a lot of service industry. And I mean, we've been harping for years at the Chamber and various bodies about service, levels of service, and unfortunately how crappy it is sometimes in Coffs Harbour, and still is today. So I think more than ever, service is very important, because I think things might slow now that Queensland's opening up and they've got they're getting government stimulus to attract people to go up there instead of New South Wales, perhaps, and people probably do that. So we might see a bit of a drop in the market that's available. So that makes service more important than ever to get people coming back to your restaurant. Make a mark on those people and get them coming back here every year, right? So that's important.
The other one is what immediately happened in March when everything shut down was you saw a lot of businesses quickly jump to become agile. A lot of cafes and restaurants that put up an online ordering and everything process. I know Duncan at his gym was doing like online training sessions, Zoom sessions and everything, and renting out equipment. But people were making those decisions on the fly. So now that we're sort of cruising and comfortable, it's a good idea to cash flow plan, but also just to think, how could my business, I hate to use a buzzword, but pivot. If the same kind of thing comes up again, what's my plan? Like, what can I do differently this time, better? And there's so much technology out there that can really change the game, you know? So maybe just putting a bit of thought into how I'd work with that, as opposed to being forced into working with that, if you know, the inevitable happens. Because at some point we are going to have to open the borders, you know? We've been super fortunate being a big island that's pretty sparsely populated, but it's something we've got to deal with, you know?
Yeah, just on Richard's point, I mean, we've had a relatively captive audience because we haven't had international borders, we've had restrictions on state borders, but now is the time to look after those people so they do get a good experience when they come here. They do get a good experience when they come to your shops. So when the chances, the times when the borders are open, they will come back. They won't go, well, you know, we had a bad experience, so we're not going to go here anymore, we'll go somewhere else. And I think that's very important. While it's tough times, look after them really well so when it does get open right up and they've got multiple choices, they will keep coming back to your establishment.
There's definitely been a change in mentality though around like domestic travel. That's been frustrating in the surf to see more heads. But it's obvious that people are loving just seeing their own country and supporting their own, you know, countrymen and women. That's going to be a lasting change.
Yes. Yeah. I personally, when this all happened and you start to actually look around your local area and you'd see these ads go to Queensland, I'm thinking, what for? Why do we need to go anywhere? This is such a fantastic place. And I'll tell everyone that story. And if everybody does that,
That's what we've been saying for years, Richard. We live in the best place in the world.
Yep.
So Richard, I know how good it is. I'm 5th generation local. There you go.
Yep.
So with some of those kind of thought processes and stuff, what sort of support is there available? Not just, I mean, obviously to do cash flow and budgeting and stuff, but also thinking around some of those service level improvements or ways to include technology in your business, or actually rather than just doing something on the hop, plan to do it maybe more efficiently or more things. So I don't know whether Kellon and Tony might be best to answer this, but certainly some of the other stuff.
I think one of the interesting things that have come out of this, and sometimes it's really overlooked, is mental health. So the government has, the New South Wales government in particular, has announced some assistance the other week. I haven't got the details on me right at the moment, but there are programs to help you through those issues. I know in the work that I've done over the last 12 months, particularly with the bushfires and the early stages of COVID, mental health was a really big issue for a lot of people. And you still have mental health plans that you can see with your GP. So I do really recommend, if you are struggling a little bit, go talk to a professional. I'm not a professional. I'll listen to your story. That's all good, and I'll help you where I can. But take up that extra level of support that's there for you so that you come out of this, and then you can help your staff as well because they're also in the same predicament. So that's one form of assistance which is different to the economic side.
So there's a government website, Head to Health, I think that's what it's called, which has everything listed on it. Even on our own 6 Degrees website, we've got a good, like a healthy mind checklist, which kind of just helps you through some questions. And certainly then if you need some more further advice than that, there's some ways to access that. So
Yeah. And the government's just announced a increase in the funding for apprentices and trainees, and there's some big money out there now, so that's available. There's always government grants available. Some are harder to get than others, but please, you know, if you've got any questions, get in touch with your local chamber, work with them, work with your advisors. There's plenty of support out there. It's just asking the question. And particularly one of the things, I'm a big advocate of local chambers because it brings together a very diverse cross-section of businesses in your local community, and you'll naturally find someone that's been through the same situation or very similar to you previously, and they can advise and help you to get through it. So don't be afraid to put your hand up and ask for help.
So just on that note, Kel, you're not the only one to have gone through something. There's always someone else who has, and there are people around who can share and help you through that experience.
So, and not to just keep plugging 6 Degrees, but we do have, so on the website, 6degreesco.com.au, we do have a list of all the different advisory services and assistance that can be provided. So certainly Business Connect is one that's provided through the state government. We have a couple of locally based federal government support services as well. And then obviously industry associations and things like that. So we actually have quite a lot of support available in our area, which is a really great thing. There's also many private businesses, so particularly accountants and legal, that can provide that more specific advice as well. Another thing, and Kellon touched on it, but some of the grants that might be available at the moment that people may know about or may not. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of organisations too that can assist you with it. But there's grants, as I said, available for trainees. There's money available if you're employing people. There's a number of government websites. If you just, like I did last night, doing a bit of research, typed in government grants, and there's numerous sites there. There's government departments that can help you with that sort of thing. The chamber again. The council, Business Australia, the organisation I work for, there's plenty of opportunities to look for those things, and there's plenty of advice out there. So if you have something that you think is worth funding that's a bit different, and to give you an example, a sporting uniform organisation got in touch with me the other day. They've got a 3D model so you can try on your uniform, and they're after some funding, so I put them in touch with a couple of people to look at it. But it's those things that are slightly different that the government's always interested in funding. But by all means, talk to your advisors, talk to the council, to Fiona, talk to the chamber, come to 6 Degrees, look for that information, and certainly see if it's there for you.
Yeah, I'll just put on my accountant hat and say, keep your numbers up to date. I can appreciate that not everyone's as enthusiastic about that.
Yeah.
I certainly can. But, you know, I can't speak highly enough about using a cloud accounting file, and it does happen quite a bit that people come looking for assistance or they want to talk through something, but if the numbers aren't in something of a straight order, we're just guessing in the dark. So if you keep that up to date, and the cloud accounting stuff can make it easier, a lot easier. You're in a good place to make decisions, to go and look for funding. I still sort of get these, I get chased a lot by someone needing quickly a tax return from 10 months ago to go and get money from the bank. You can do this more intelligently, you know, rather than the bank's now looking at numbers 10 months old. If you have an accounting file up, there are lenders that will just analyse that accounting file, you know, and things can move a lot more quickly in terms of getting you funding and getting an answer to make a decision. So I'm certainly understanding that it's not everyone's cup of tea, but just help yourself and do your best.
Then find someone whose cup of tea it is.
Yeah, that's it. You know, that's a bit of a, we do that as business owners. We think, I can do this, I can do that, I can do that. But sometimes you've got to value your time and think, what's it better for me to put my efforts on, and what's better to outsource to someone else?
Yeah, just on the figures though, very good point there, Jack. To get a government grant, you're going to need the figures.
Yeah,
that's totally right.
You know, there's some grants out there, refresh and renew, $1 million. So there's $10,000 grants available. But $1 million by 10,000 is not a lot of money, not a lot of grants available across the state. Yeah. So you've got to put your best foot forward. To put your best foot forward, you need to have your figures to go today, not to get them prepared in the future.
Yeah. So just a couple of points. So Kellon mentioned there's levels of grants available from across all levels of government, and also different community organisations as well. So council does subscribe to a Grants Guru platform. Find it on 6degreesco.com.au. There you go, that's my plug again. But we certainly have a link on there that takes you through, and a company organises grants that are available for people in our area, and then certainly other spaces like international, state-based, and also locally based. We do encourage you to sign up and register on that. You don't have to, but what happens then is you'll be notified when something comes up of the interest levels that you've put into that. So it's a really good service that's provided, and it keeps you up to date if government grants what you're at. Obviously, that's not the only way to support your business. There's many other types of support. So there's been a lot of online training, but also organisations such as Tafe and other registered training organisations are providing a lot of support through training businesses. And Kellon mentioned about the apprenticeship and traineeship thing, but there's also Tafe at the moment have like a founders program. They've also got quite a few fee-free courses. one of the federal government supports, the Job Trainer, provides 100,000 spaces across Australia to have fee-free training. So there's a local representative here who looks after that. So, you know, there's a lot of different kinds of support out there. One of the other things that I was going to say was just around, I guess, Tony mentioned the Refresh and Renew, which is for tourism and hospitality businesses. It is $10,000 and it's a great way to refresh and renew your product. While it's important to have your financials in order, it's a very interesting grant. Is you have to show how your service does not necessarily meet the expectations of your customers. And that's one of the ways that you can access the grant, because it's literally to allow businesses to upgrade what they've done based on customer feedback. So yes, you need your numbers, but you also need a bit of feedback from customers or an understanding of maybe how your business can be improved to satisfy the needs of that. So that's just an interesting take on a grant. So I certainly encourage you, if you're in that space, to have a look at that. It's $10,000 unmatched funding. So government essentially giving you $10,000 to improve your business. So we really encourage, you know, there's $1 million, and as Tony said, not that many when you divide it by 10,000, but if all of them can come here to Coffs, that'd be a great thing. So.
Even if one comes here to Coffs, that's pretty good as well.
Just, I guess, because we're getting reasonably close to, oh no, we've got a bit of time. So what would be your key points? I'm going to ask each of you this question. What would be a key point for business that you would give, just as if there's one thing that you would say to business about facing the changes that we would suggest have occurred since December for most businesses in our region? What's something that you really need to focus on?
I might start off just basically, you've given me the answer, Fiona, but that grant is looking at customer expectations and what you're not fulfilling with your customer. I think that's a great exercise to do at any time. Whether you know, and even if you apply for the grant and aren't successful, you're going to get some really valuable information about what your customer wants from you. And if you're not providing that, then you need to look at how you can provide it, what you can do, what you can change to make sure you are meeting their expectations, and that'll keep them coming back. And that's half your battle is keeping your customers coming back.
Yeah, I think it's very important that you're looking forwards with regards to your business. You want to be, and I liken it to a bus, you want to be the bloke in the front of the bus looking forwards, not the bloke looking out the back window. So, and as Jack said, getting everything up to date with where you're at with your financials and knowing where your cash flow's at and preparing for things in the future and changing and adapting. And also one thing we haven't talked about too is in relation to staff, but where you have staff is obviously really looking after the ones that are valuable parts of your business. So, and hopefully that's all of your staff. And, you know, talking to them about your business and, you know, the impacts it's having on you as the owner of the business. I think it's always valuable to talk to your employees about that and just basically make sure they're on board with where you're heading and what you're doing as well. So,
yeah, I sort of talk about accounting more, I guess, but
Okay.
I'd probably say a lot of people simplify a little bit about their accountant and think that this guy does tax returns, he does my tax return. But if you give him the chance, he can give you a whole lot more. And yeah, like Richard said, you can just be proactive about this. So my experience has been that there's a lot of, for example, sole traders around Coffs. And so lots of the people, they square up their tax at the end of the year. But you can always talk to end of the year. I mean, you'd be lodging that in May. You can always start those conversations months in advance about getting your tax return done and just hand it in at the last minute. And at least that way you sort of know what bill you're up for and you can start squirreling away a bit of cash. And if you're not going to have the money there, you know, there's a thing called a payment arrangement plan that you can negotiate or your tax agent can negotiate so that you can pay the amount over time. And this is just smart cash flow planning. Money in your pocket today is always more valuable than it is just sitting with the tax man. So yeah, it's more than just rushing in a tax return at the last minute. If you put a bit of thought into it and act proactively, again, that relies on keeping things a little tidy and up to date. That's a really easy win. Having a conversation before 30 June about what are my taxes, what does my profit position look like this year? Yeah, instead of after 30 June where you just kind of have to deal with it now looking backwards. If you have those conversations more like sort of April, May, June, before the end of the financial year, that can save you like tens of thousands of dollars. Or even just, you can play with the timing of when you're going to hand over your tax. And if you can push it back another 12 months, that's going to help you.
I think Tony touched on it as well. This year is probably more important than ever to actually see where you're at, because you might be surprised how well your business has actually gone. And with depreciation pools being written off last year and no deduction there anymore, or loans paid down, you might find your deductions are a bit lower. So you might actually find this year your profit is even higher than it has been, and you think, well, I've been through Corona, it should be down, but you might be surprised. So again, the importance of getting it up to date, finding out where you're at and what you can do about it is quite important as well.
The second point of that, Richard, is staying up to date.
Staying up to date.
Yeah. My takeout from today is simply change. The last 18 months, who would have thought we'd have bushfires? Then we had floods in January. Then we ended up with coronavirus. I had a car accident in February. That didn't help things either. So we are in a constant flux of change. The rules have changed. The government has come out with a massive assistance package. Can they continue to afford to do that? It's debatable if they could do the same amount of assistance again in the future. So that's why the assistance is being targeted. So prepare your business for change. Change is coming faster than ever. Technology is changing fast, very fast. The business that you were in 3 years ago may not be the business you're going to be in next year. The business you're in today may be a different business next year, okay? So think through what you've got, what assets you have, what opportunities you have, and how can you work with the cards that you've been dealt so that you can play a winning hand into the future.
So based on that then, what would be something that businesses might need to do to pre-prepare in case there is a lockdown again because of COVID, or undoubtedly, you know, we've been told that there may be other things that occur of a similar sort of nature in the future. So what sorts of things would, with the knowledge of what's occurred over COVID, where I think Jack mentioned we kind of all just went into this massive, we've got to make things happen. What sorts of things should businesses be looking at to pre-prepare for, I'm going to say, the next disaster?
I would say,
gloomy, but, you know.
talk to your staff about it, have a plan in place, and also talk to your customers. You know, if things do shut down, let them know that you're still operating. You know, it could be something as simple as that. Keep letting them know you're still there. And I guess that's where technology comes into it, your online presence, and basically just keep communicating with them. We had a wonderful experience last year when we actually pretty well rang every single business client and went through the whole JobKeeper process with them. And that was a lot of work, but they really appreciated it. And we've got through this period and we're saying we should do this more often, right? We should be all talking more, because whilst the monetary side of things might be coming to an end, there's a lot of help out there and a lot of advice, and sometimes that might be all you need. You might just need someone to tell you, what you're doing's fantastic, to give you some confidence, or why don't you try this or try that, or there's this available. So there's lots of help out there. So I think the main thing is just, communication to me is a big one.
You got to take this approach that we're all in it together. Because we are, you know, we live in a little bit of a remote spot and it's beautiful here, but we do rely on each other. I'd otherwise, push the technology stuff again. There's some pretty good apps out there like Float or Spotlight, Fathom, a few of these that plug right into your Xero file. So long as you're keeping the Xero thing up to date, you can do scenario sort of planning. And Tony touched on this earlier. So just look at like worst case scenario, what's my cash going to look like, you know, expected scenario, best scenario. And I definitely have started seeing that people are having a good year because they don't realise like, oh, I had all this JobKeeper income come through as well. You know, they're a bit surprised. Maybe they didn't have like a massive bumper year, but they didn't do as badly as they thought. So you can definitely use technology to sort of look at likely outcomes and just be a bit more prepared if this does sort of happen again.
I was just going to say, on the Business Connect website, the government's already put together a package for people for resilience in the future, and it's called Get Ready Business. It's a free toolkit that has been developed in conjunction with the New South Wales Department of Industry, New South Wales Small Business Commissioner, and the New South Wales Office of Emergency Management to help businesses get ready for disasters in 5 simple steps.
We have some hard copies in our office if anyone needs them.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
There's lots of different ways that people can prepare for something. And I guess it's like prepare for the worst, and if it never happens, well, okay, that's great. It's a bit like insurance. If you don't have to, you pay the premium, and if you don't have to claim on it, that's even better.
Still a good thing.
Yeah.
Kellon, any?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I would do is advise is to do some disaster recovery planning, talk to your staff, talk to your customers, and even look at potential customers. And if the worst case does happen and you have to shut the business, what can you do with what you've got to maybe look at creating another venture? So look at some alternatives, but work out, you know, the worst does happen. What do we need to do first? What's the first thing we need to do? What do we need to do after that? So if there's another lockdown, what do we do with the stock? What do we do with the customers? How do we tell them what we're up to? What do we do with our staff? Make sure they're aware of what roles and responsibilities they're going to have going forward. So, and this disaster recovery planning does help businesses going forward, and it just lets you consider various scenarios that may come up in the future. So, yeah.
So one last tricky question. So there's been a lot of talk in Coffs around the inability of people to find staff, and some of that has been blamed on things like JobKeeper and JobSeeker. But certainly, I guess, what kind of impact do you think uncertainty has on employee engagement, and how might businesses mitigate that? It's not necessarily an area of specialty of any of these guys, but I'm sure you hear from businesses and things like that. So just some, I guess, viewpoint on that is probably one of the biggest things that we hear from businesses at the moment.
I think like just being flexible and reassuring, being human, even just as a business.
Yeah.
You know, having those conversations up front with your staff. I think Richard, you were saying like that. Well, if it goes this way, well, here's our plan.
Yep.
So that definitely helps. But also, I think being flexible as well, like trusting your staff that they, if it suits, they might be able to do some work from home, or and there's a lot of hybrid business models being born out of this, where it's a bit go in the office some days, work at home other days. It's the work landscape's changing, but being like a progressive, modern employer, I think that helps.
Yep.
You've also got to stand your ground a bit as well. I mean, we're talking about some ridiculous negotiations taking place on potential hires earlier. You sort of can't necessarily say, yeah, I'm good with you just come in and work for cash. That's not going to be okay.
No.
So yeah.
Yeah, sure. Any other?
Yeah, I think that's a real tough one. It's like a big picture thing. I don't know the solution to it. We need safety measures in place for the unemployed and those that can't find work or can't work. But yeah, I don't know what the answer is to. It goes back to training, goes back to boosting Tafe. There's a lot of problems still there that haven't been addressed, and I think that has to partially come from the government, but maybe it has to come from private enterprise and council as well, and a collaborative approach. But yeah, something needs to be done.
Yeah, I think there's also lots of different problems in the mix. So I think mental health has been a big issue over the last 12 months, as I mentioned before. So people on JobKeeper and JobSeeker, there's a lot of angst out there regarding those. Some that don't feel they might be able to come back to work for some of those particular reasons. So as an employee, if you're looking for staff, you may have to be a little bit more accommodating to people's needs. So they might be able to work 5 days a week, but they might be able to do 2 or 3 days a week. And if you can find someone else who can fit in the mix and get you across the line, then that might be an option that you might need to consider. And just be supportive of those people, because not everyone with a mental health issue it's for life. So a lot of these things are only very short-term and temporary. And so the sooner we can all help people get back onto the road to recovery, they do recover. And that's a great productive asset for society and for people on the Coffs Coast.
I think look at your staff a bit differently, obviously communicate with them. use them as a resource. You know, do they know anyone? As the old adage goes, to hire for attitude, not for skills. You can always teach skills. But thinking of it a bit differently. I give you an example. I was working with a manufacturer. He was having trouble getting labourers, and I said, "Have you have you thought about talking to the community college, because they deal with kids that have issues like ADHD and things like that?" And I said, they like repetition. So what you require from your workers is ideal for them, because they don't want variety. They just want to be doing the same thing all the time. For me to drive me nuts, and I'll be gone in a day. But he's gone down that path and had some success. So it's thinking a bit differently. It's about what you actually need, not necessarily having a ideal person in your head. But again, asking around, talking to other people, what have they done? What have they tried that works? So use your networks.
So just, I guess on the tip that Richard had about sometimes utilising, like, that it's a whole of community problem. So there are 3 councils in the area. So Nambucca Council, Coffs Council and Clarence Valley Council have joined with Tafe, and they're doing a bit of a roadshow. This is more around tourism and hospitality employees, but looking at how getting job seekers in the room, or people seeking work, not necessarily just people on job seeker benefits, in the room with potential employers that have jobs either now or in the future, and doing a bit of a face-to-face as, hey, that person looks like they might have the goods, the attitude that I require for my business. And then Tafe has looked at how they can then train those employees to be ready for work. They're starting with tourism and hospitality. They have done it in the past with construction, and looking and doing the similar sort of thing with aged care as well. So I guess that's a little bit of that more community focused approach to how we look at finding employees, or matching up people who are looking for work and people who are looking for workers. We'll see if that's the right approach, but certainly that's an avenue that we're exploring at the moment. So the one in Coffs is on the 30th of March. I think Clarence Valley is on Monday, the 22nd, and down in Nambucca, Maxwell, on the 29th of March. So I think Christina's been putting up some links in the chat box for you so that you can be aware of that.
I think flowing on from that, the job maker incentive is still in existence, where you take on someone on job seeker.
That's right.
So they'll pay 50%.
Oh, it's like $200 for under 30 and $100 30 to 35.
It's something that hasn't really been talked about too much. I haven't seen any statistics on it.
I think we had too many all job names come out that kind of got lost in the mix, I think. So,
The calculation on that is super convoluted. It's about, you can't just sack all your older workers and get young guys, because it relies on a growing headcount. There was a payroll grant
position.
So one of the questions I asked before was about some of the other concessions that have been available. So like payroll taxes being one of them, those kind of training opportunities and things like that. We're just about out of time. So is there anything else that any of you four wonderful gentlemen would like to share with the group that's up there? And then we'll finish off. So I'll start with Richard. I'll do it in an odd order, so we're not just doing it in a line. There you go.
Now, look, I think in summary, just remember that, there is a lot of help out there. So if things are still struggling, or perhaps you haven't had the time, I'd certainly advise to take it and look what's out there to help your business improve, because, we never know when things are going to change again, and we may still see a flattening in the economy, perhaps. I've been anticipating all along. Thank God it hasn't happened, but it may potentially still. We're not out of this yet. So, be resilient, be positive, and, keep going.
Tony.
There's a hell of a lot of support out there. Use it. If you're doing well, take the opportunity to still access the help that's available. To make your business bigger and better going forward. If you're in a situation where things are a little bit difficult, still put your hand up for help. The person you talk to may or may not be able to help you directly, but they might be able to direct you to someone else who can. So don't be frightened to ask.
So before I go on to the other two, there's just been a comment come up in our chat which just says, that low interest rates are available. There's a relatively easy finance, but what sort of caution might you consider for these kind of uncharted waters that, you know, business confidence is okay, but we don't quite know what's happening, particularly if you're looking at finance options?
I'd probably only look at it if you really need it.
Yeah.
Certainly, you've always got to pay it back. But if you are in a position where it might improve your business at all or allow you to expand or get into a different market, interest rates are cheap and they're supposed to be staying that way for quite a while. But again, there is that caution and uncertainty around that. We're so lucky. You talk to a lot of older people that were around when 16, 17% interest rates were around, and how the hell
older
we
people.
survive.
That's what the interest rates were when I bought my first house.
Hey, I think, I'm one of those now.
It used to be 23%. You know.
So interest rates are ridiculously low, but it may be an opportunity to take advantage of it, as long as you exercise caution and are doing something positive with those funds.
Yep. So,
Certainly worth
and I
looking.
guess that's a good time to have a chat to your accountant
Yes.
about what sorts
Chat to your
of
accountant, chat to your bank.
capabilities and
Yep.
things like that you
Yeah.
have in the future.
Yep.
Sure.
Well, they say never waste a crisis. So,
Yeah.
I mean, and there's been opportunities out of this, you know, to
Yeah.
be honest. And I feel positive about where we are on this stretch of coast. Like my wife's family's all in Canada and they're living something completely different. They think that we are living in an alternate universe because life's kind of just how it has been, you know.
Yeah.
You just wipe your hands on the way into a shop.
Yep. And check in.
The other thing I would add about interest rates is interest rates do go up and can go up. And just like we all thought the end of the world was coming March last year, and it hasn't quite arrived yet, and hopefully it won't, when things do pick up, rates may rise.
Yeah,
So-
don't just go and take cash. Like have a plan, and that's going to sort itself out. No one's going to just give you the money. You're going to have to show them a business plan and how you're going to get the money back to them. So obviously don't be foolish, and I wouldn't say just go and get money because you can. But if you've got a plan, money's never been cheaper.
Yep. So any last bits of advice? I'll come back to Jack and then Kellon. Last bits of anything that you haven't, I guess, touched on that you thought you might want to share with people about this morning as they prepare for the possible debt cliff is what we say.
Personally, I feel that that I don't feel negative about it. Debt cliff is like a bit of a scary name, but it's been we've been relatively untouched, and I'm feeling optimistic. I totally agree with what Richard said that now is really the time we're going to find out what's going to happen. But I'm feeling optimistic. I think there's been a change in attitudes about people wanting to get behind their country and people around them and go and travel, and we're kind of ready for Christmas crowds to wear off, but it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. No, I'd just push the angle about get your we're coming into June again, get on top of your numbers, get them sort of tidy, and have conversations with your accountant before June, not after it.
Excellent. Kellon?
Yeah, look, as we've all said, there's a lot of resources out there. Please take advantage of them. Talk to some people. If you're not a member of your local chamber, I strongly encourage you to consider joining. Also, Business Australia, which I work for, one of our organisations, it's free membership, but they have a business checkpoint explaining your options. It's a webinar on the 25th of March. It's free to attend from 11 to 12. If you go to the Business Australia website, you'll find all the information and other information there. But again, there's a lot of information out there. It's available to you. Take advantage of it. Just put your hand up and ask if you're struggling at all.
So on that, I met with some people who are looking at setting up a new enterprise in Coffs as a hub model last night, Global Sisters. And one of the things that they actually talked about was the collaborative community that Coffs presents, both internally but also externally to people. So based on what Kellon's just said, there is a lot of support and a lot of people who are willing to offer support. So if you do, and across a wide variety of, I guess, topics, so please reach out. If you're unsure as to who that might be, then certainly at council, we're able to provide you with who the right connection is. Part of our role is to facilitate connection between businesses. So I just want to really thank these 4 4 panellists. They've got up bright and early this morning. We bribed them with coffee and breakfast, but they have come along early this morning to answer these questions. Thank you to each of you that have come along and listened in. We have recorded this webinar and it will be available on the 6 Degrees website in a few days, I'll say, a week or so. I'm looking at my person here. But we certainly will let you know that through Facebook, LinkedIn and Instagram. If you join up to 6 Degrees Co, we'll certainly let you know that. So thank you again. Thanks for all of you getting out of bed nice and early, but thank you particularly to our panellists. So farewell for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.